Hello.
Hey Frank, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Great. Thanks so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So our podcast is about your journey in the music industry, how you
Sure.
got to where you are today,
Hmm.
and of course the split that you're going to be putting out with NoFX, which is
Yeah.
so rad.
Thank you.
Cool, man. Well, tell me, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in just out in the countryside in the southern England, outside a city called Winchester.
Hmm.
Although I sort of got shipped off to various kind of boarding schools from a pretty young age, so it was kind of all over the shop. But yeah, essentially southern England.
Okay, Southern England. How did you learn how to, or how'd you get into music originally?
I fell in love with rock and roll through the auspices of Iron Maiden, funnily enough. A
Oh,
friend of mine,
awesome.
yeah, a friend. I was playing Games Workshop. You know what I mean by Games Workshop?
Mm-mm.
Like Orcs and Goblins, little kind of
Oh, okay, sure.
and a friend of mine I was playing with, his a brother had an Iron Maiden poster, and I thought it was Games Workshop related, and he said, "No, that's a band." And I said, "Get out of here! There's no band that could possibly be that cool." And then I got a tape, and then I was a goner from there, and I went through metal, and then grunge, and then punk rock, and then hardcore, and then other things.
Wow. What Iron Maiden record was it?
It was Killers.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I have the cover artwork tattooed on my leg as a result.
Do you really? That's rad. I love that band.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Cool, cool. Okay, so you got in metal, punk rock, all that. What was the first instrument you learned how to play? Was it guitar?
Guitar, yeah. I mean, once I sort of fell in love, I had my kind of Damascus moment with Iron Maiden, and then straight away was just like, well, how do I get involved in this?
Hmm.
And bugged my parents. I got the kind of electric guitar starter pack from the department store, kind of thing. You know,
Yeah.
$100 for a black and white Strat copy, and a little amp and all that. So I got that when I'm reasonably sure for my 11th birthday,
Okay. So
and
you
then
get it
just started playing.
from there, and then did you start like a band in primary school
Yeah,
or anything like that?
I was in some bands at home with some friends. When I was about 16, I ended up in a band called Knee Jerk, and we did our first tour when I was 16 years old, which we booked ourselves.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we were obsessed with Black Flag, and we read lots of books about punk rock, and punk rock means going out and booking it yourself, so we did. It was a catastrophe, logistically and financially, but we just kind of got on with it, and then that sort of morphed into over time into a band called Million Dead, and Million
Uh-huh.
Dead put out two records, and we did a whole sort of 4.5 years on the road, and then that broke up, and I did solo stuff.
Yeah, and then part of Million Dead came and joined in your band, right? Your backing band, or no?
No, no, no. That was a clean break. I mean, so basically, what happened was Million Dead fell apart after, like, say, about 4.5 years of being a band.
Uh-huh.
There were a lot of different reasons for me picking up an acoustic guitar at that point, and part of it's to do with what I was listening to and what I was interested in, and where I thought I had things to say. But another part of it was that at the time, I felt quite sort of let down by the other members of the band. I'm old enough now to look back and realize that's not necessarily 100% fair, and that I was
Hmm.
probably as culpable as anybody else. But at the time, I felt like I'd been sort of, yeah, left in the lurch a little bit. So the part of the attraction of going out on my own with an acoustic guitar is I wouldn't have to rely on anybody else.
Hmm.
So I went out and just started playing shows. I did about 2 years just completely solo,
Wow.
and then sort of gradually picked up a band over time. Three of the members of the band were in another band called Dive Dive, who I did some touring with,
Oh, okay.
and we got on well, and they were cool, and they had their own recording set up, and I needed to make a record, so they said, well, if you come record with us, we can play on the record as well. And it's gone from there over the years, and we picked up our keys player. We met him at a poker game, funnily enough, and it's gone on from there. But none of those guys were involved in anything I was doing before.
Okay.
The drummer from Million Dead is now in a band with me called Mongrel Horde that we do very occasionally. And we're still the best of friends, but I didn't want to have someone from my previous musical life involved intimately in my new thing because I wanted it to be different.
Sure, sure. Were you writing the songs for Million Dead also?
Co-writing, I wrote
Okay.
all the lyrics, and I wrote quite a lot of the guitar parts. But we were pretty kind of fiercely democratic as a band,
Hmm.
which I think, on the one hand, at times made us better than we would otherwise have been, but it also meant that we wanted to kill each other for most of the time that we were a band. And it is, I mean, just a different thing being a, in quotes, solo artist, but
Hmm.
you know, there's definitely easier having kind of clearer lines of authority. Like what I say goes. Do you know what I mean? So,
Sure. Nobody to argue with you.
yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, was it hard to make the transformation from like what you were doing in Million Dead to more of the singer-songwriter stuff
Yeah,
with your
it
solo?
was. I mean, I don't want to bang on about it too much, but it was a big jump, but in many different ways. I mean, it was me trying something I didn't really know how to do, which is to
Mhm.
be a, in quotes, folk singer. And you know, so it was engaging with a new genre, if you like, a new kind of approach. I mean, it was definitely songwriting focused. It was solo. It wasn't necessarily about kind of weird time signatures and abject noise and screaming and that
Mhm.
kind of thing. So that was a big change. I mean, it was a big change as well because, like, you know, Million Dead were not a massive band, but we could pull maybe 800 people in our hometown and a couple of hundred people elsewhere. It was respectable.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
pretty good.
yeah, and then that band broke up, and my first solo show in London, London being our hometown, my first solo show in London, three people came, and it was a free show as well, and that was the universe telling me that I was definitely going to have to like earn my stripes all over again,
Mhm.
which is fine. And I mean, obviously there were times when that was quite rough, but in retrospect, I'm glad that I kind of knocked it all down to build it back up again.
Yeah. Where was the shift that you saw? Like when did you start seeing like the solo stuff really start kind of picking up as far as like people
Um,
attending your shows and all that
yeah, I
stuff?
mean, I think by time so I did a couple of years of just kind of finding my feet and finding my sound and writing songs, and I did like a couple of EPs and stuff like that, and then
Mhm.
in 2007 I did a debut solo album, and by time which we toured a lot, and by the time we got to the end of the touring cycle for the first solo album, we were kind of back to where Million Dead had been in terms of success and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
um, and then the story of my solo career has for the most part just been terribly gradualist. You know, it's like it's all just been very slow kind of upward curve, and there have been times when that's been pretty frustrating in the sense that I was friends with people who got signed and then got enormous immediately, you know, and got signed for
Mhm.
millions of pounds, and suddenly they were all over the radio and every magazine cover and playing to tens of thousands of people a night. And I didn't get those kind of breaks. And at the time, I found that pretty frustrating. Do you know what I mean? It
Mhm.
was like, motherfucker, I'm over here. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But in retrospect, I'm kind of quite glad about it because it was so organic what happened for me. It was felt very word of mouth. You know, it was like so and so somebody else told somebody else, and you know, next time I came around, everybody brought three friends or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, over time, radio did become a thing, and I started getting some press and all the rest of it. But even by that point, I'd already kind of established quite a lot. And like, you know, for example, I signed a deal to license my records to a major label internationally after I'd already headlined and sold out an arena. Do you know what I mean?
Oh
So
my gosh.
which was, but that was, but that, which was why, incidentally, I was able to do it as a license deal, not a straight sign, because it was like, well, what the fuck? I don't owe you people anything. Do you know what I mean?
Right. You're
Yeah,
already doing
I have my thing already. So, you know,
it.
it's been really cool to be able to be that kind of independent, sort of structurally, should we say? I mean, people
Uh-huh.
might argue about whether or not it's independent in quotes, releasing records on a major label, but who gives a shit? The point is, you know, I'm the captain of my ship, and
Right.
that's how I wanted it to be.
Sure. That's amazing. Well, I mean, a lot of your stuff is put out through Epitaph too in the
Mm.
beginning.
Yeah,
And
we license
that's
stuff.
like,
I mean,
I
yeah,
mean,
which is cool as shit. It's
I
amazing,
was
right?
gonna say, aside from what you're gonna release on Fat Records, I mean, that's pretty much the other most
Yeah,
amazing
totally.
punk rock label there is.
It certainly is. And Brett Gurewitz is a fantastic dude. And like, really, so basically, the thing is, I'm signed to Extra Mile Recordings, which is a very small British cottage industry label. And I'm
Mhm.
still signed to them, and they will be my label forever. You know, we do license deals with other people. For example, we did a license deal to Epitaph for release
Mhm.
outside the UK because Extra Mile is just UK based. But
Got it.
but you know, they were still it was still arm's length kind of thing. But Brett was super cool about that, and it's yeah, they were really great to me for a few records. We moved on to a different setup, and Brett was so cool about it. He was like, "They think it's a great idea, go for it." And he said, "If you ever want to come back in my direction, then just give me a call, and I'll be here." So you know, it's a good way.
Wow.
Yeah,
What a cool relationship to have. I mean, especially with
yeah,
him.
yeah, definitely. I mean, he's a super smart dude, and he's a kind dude as well.
hmm Okay. So you put out the first full length record. When did you start like touring outside of the UK?
I think on that first album cycle, well, actually, I say that I had a couple of like early forays overseas. I went to the Baltic states, Latvia and Lithuania, simply because Million Dead had been there. Million Dead didn't tour out the UK outside the UK that much, but we had been there. So I went and did
Hmm.
some solo shows there, and I ended up touring in Russia and all these
Oh
kind of
wow.
crazy places. Yeah, and then kind of started doing the more usual, kind of going to mainland Europe and going to the USA and going to Canada and that kind of the usual shit that kind of started happening around the sort of end of this cycle for my second record. It took a little while to get going,
Hmm.
but 2009 really was the year when I really started touring outside the UK and coming to the States.
Okay. And when you first started just the solo thing, were you just playing? I mean, you were playing by yourself. Like, when did you start playing with the band, or were you
um,
touring ever by yourself?
I toured by myself, like I say, for a couple of years, and then there was a long period of time where it was kind of it depended on the situation and on the money, to be blunt, because
Hmm.
obviously touring on your own is very cheap, and touring with four other people and a backline and a drum kit and all that shit is
Yeah.
more expensive. So the first band tour we did was the release tour for my first album.
Okay.
And then from then on, it was just kind of like when and where I could afford it, we would do full band stuff.
Hmm.
But I didn't take the band to the States for another 3 years after that because I just couldn't find a way of making that work financially, of getting a whole
Hmm.
band to the USA. But we did eventually get there. That was the intention. It's long through my career. It's been kind of a really cool bit of flexibility in the sense that if there is a territory that I'm new to, I can just go there with my guitar, and that makes
Hmm.
the money work. Which and hopefully build something that means that I can then afford to bring the band back and not bankrupt myself in the process. So that's been so. For example, even now, like so, this year it got cancelled because of I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been a pandemic. But
I was wondering what was going on.
yeah, yeah. But I was supposed to be doing my first tour in South America in April this year, and I've never been there before, and I couldn't really afford to take the band there for a first visit to play to like 150 people a night or whatever.
Hmm.
But I can go on my own with a guitar and just make it work. So it's a good bit of flexibility.
Is it like when you go by yourself, especially like early on, was it just like you and your guitar and you'd show up to venues by yourself, or did you like have a merch person or like a
Um,
companion? Like,
Super early doors, for a lot in the UK, it was pretty much always just me. I would sell my own merch out of my backpack after the show, and I mean, in quotes, my own tour manager. Not that I was really tour managing in any meaningful sense.
right.
I was pretty drunk for quite a lot of that period of my life, and it made me aggressively sociable in the sense that, like, an awful lot of the time, I'd say about three-quarters of the time, I would ask if anyone could put me up for the night before the last song of the show kind of
Hmm.
thing because I couldn't afford hotels or whatever, and so I slept on an awful lot of people's random strangers' floors and stuff, which was cool. And in fact, I made some lifelong friends doing that.
Yeah.
And then as time's gone by, I mean, obviously with the band shows, we have a bit more crew. Nowadays, if I do a regular tour, there's 12 of us on the bus.
Hmm.
So and even when I do solo shows now, I tend to take a couple of people with me to do sound and to do merch and whatever it might be. But I can always just pick up my guitar and go to a venue. It's easy enough, and I like that in the sense that I like the idea that there is a part of what I do that doesn't need kind of a huge support network. It's just one person with an instrument. Just go and fucking play. I can still
Yeah.
do that.
That's awesome. So you have 8 records out. I mean, eight
Hmm.
full lengths.
Hmm.
Um, like, so is there like a was there a certain milestone that you remember like when with your career that you kind of pushed you to the next level?
Well, like I say, it was kind of gradual. So there were lots and lots of little things like Radio One, which is kind of like the rock and pop station in the UK, started
Hmm.
playing one of my songs in the evenings from my second album, and
Okay.
that made a noticeable difference. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like I remember that, and then like in 2010, we got the opening slot on a Green Day tour. And that made quite a big
Whoa.
difference. It was only
Wow.
two. I say tour; it was two shows, but there were two stadium shows, and that made a difference.
Was that the first time you ever played to a stadium?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and it was
Wow. Was that cool or
yeah,
terrifying?
terrifying. And indeed, this is a little bit technical, but like at that point, me and my band, we weren't using in-ear monitoring. You know what I mean?
Oh
Where you
yeah,
have
yeah.
and like I cannot now remember quite how we pulled it off because the sound on stage at a stadium without in-ear monitoring is fucking awful because the reflections from the back of the room. Like I remember my drummer hitting his kick drum and you could almost see it go around the stadium and then come back at you like a second and a half later. It's like trying to play a song with a second and a half delay on the entire mix.
Oh my gosh.
But we did, we did it. We pulled it off. What can I say? But
Yeah.
so we did that, and then like doing a deal with Epitaph was a big thing. One of the bigger milestones for me was this arena show I did at Wembley Arena in 2012, which I sold out. I mentioned it earlier. I mean, that wasn't necessarily a show that kind of made lots of stuff happen. It was like the culmination of lots of stuff already having happened, if you see what I mean. It was like, and the idea of someone like me, an independent artist, headlining an arena show was fucking ridiculous at the time. And I'm kind of proud to say that quite a few people have sort of followed that since. But yeah, it was definitely a thing. A lot of people in the industry were just like, "What the fuck?" And it worked. And I think that made quite a lot of people take me a bit more seriously. Should we say? There was definitely a vibe for quite a long time that people in kind of like the sort of the mainstream central part of the industry didn't really know who I was because I wasn't coming up through their channels. I wasn't on one of their labels, and I wasn't on daytime radio playlists, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
And so I remember like somebody I know kind of who works at quite a large booking agency mentioned to their boss that I was playing an arena show, and they were like, there has to be some kind of mistake here. How can that be possible? And it was like, no, it's totally possible. It's sold out actually. But it's just that because I wasn't in their kind of usual kind of way of doing things, they were kind of oblivious to my existence, which again, there were times when that was annoying, and there were times when that was really fucking cool because it just felt like I was the underdog for a really long time.
Sure.
Which was cool as shit. But yeah, so there's been all these kind of little milestones going forward. I mean, in terms of America, the early tours I did in America were all opening tours for, like, I opened for Offspring, Social D, Dropkick Murphys, and in particular Flogging Molly. That broke us to a lot of people in the States. So, there's been all these little things that have helped over the years.
Yeah. Like I know when Positive Songs for Negative People came out, I was working on the radio here in San Diego, and that you came through and did like a little performance thing, and that was the first time I was really exposed to your song. We played the Next Storm on the air for a while, and I was blown away. And then I went back and obviously listened to the earlier stuff, and I really love the song 1933. When I heard that song, I was like, wow, like So that's how I kind of got it. I was just interested because I wasn't exposed to your music here until that record came out.
Sure, totally. But then, I mean, one thing I would say that I'm very philosophically wedded to is that I don't like it when kind of people in the given fan base for an artist get a bit snooty about when they got on board. You know what I mean? Like, fuck off, man. Like, just because you weren't in the right place at the right time doesn't make you a lesser person. And like, in a way, it's kind of cool to, speaking as a listener, if you come across an artist and they've got a huge back catalog, it's just like, that's how
it was. I was like, whoa, this guy's really rad. And then I thought you were like a new artist. I'm like, wait a minute, he has like 5 albums before this.
Right, totally. And it gives you time, and that'll kill some time. Do you know what I mean?
It was great.
Not to do with your life.
So you have a split coming out with NOFX,
which I might add, that is still isn't that a ridiculous thing to say out loud?
It's so awesome, and Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I still kind of laugh every time I say it out loud because it's so ridiculous. It's like, I have a split with NOFX. How fucked up is that, man?
It's so rad, though. And I love that they're doing it. Like, one of the coolest shows I ever went to was when NOFX toured with Rancid when they put out their split together. And they did the same thing where they're covering each other's songs. And I saw that you guys are doing that. I was like, this is so dope.
Yeah, totally. Well, the thing is, like, I grew up as a NOFX fan. I'm a diehard NOFX fan, in fact. And I bought the Rancid NOFX split when it came out in 2002. And if you told me 18 years ago that the next time they did a split, it would be with me, I would have fucking shit myself on the spot. You know what I mean? So, like, and I kind of did anyway, It was Mike's idea, obviously. And we did a festival together last summer. I mean, we've been friends for like a decade, me and Mike. So, it's not like it was completely out of the blue, but we, as is often the way, if you're friends with another musician, you tend to see each other at festivals, right? Because, paths cross. And we were doing a festival in Italy, and the top of the bill was us, Sick of It All, NOFX. Pretty cool. And we played, and then in between my set, NoFX set, I was kind of, I watched a bit of Sizeable, but I was hanging out with Mike on his bus, kind of getting ready for his show. And he just turned around and went, he was like, your show was really cool. I really enjoyed it. And I said, thanks, man. And he said, do you want to do a split? And I went, yes. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, fuck me. So yeah, it was an exciting thing.
That is so rad. And then, I mean, being a lifelong NoFX fan and their catalog being ridiculously long as well, was it hard to narrow down the songs?
Yeah.
Like, how did you find the songs you wanted to cover?
The first thing I did was I listened through to every NoFX song, which took a while. And it was, what was also cool about that is that, like, even though I am a pretty big fan, I still came across stuff I wasn't super familiar with. Or hadn't heard. I mean, some of the kind of more like B-sidey stuff or whatever. But, you know, I was thinking like I wanted to do my favorite songs, but it's not quite that simple because you have to find a song where you can bring something to the table. There's no point in doing a straight cover of a song because people can just listen to the original. So fucking whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
So, you know, it was a case of trying to find a song where I could think of an angle that would be different and that would be cool, you know. And there were definitely songs that I had on my list that I didn't that we didn't get to or couldn't find a way of doing in a different way. So for example, we were trying to do sing Double at the Triple Rock, which I fucking love that song, but it's like it's based around that riff so much that if you take the riff away, it's not the same song, but if you put the riff in there, it has to go a certain way. And like me and my band like spent ages fucking around with that and just gave up eventually and moved on. So, you know, so it was definitely a bit of I mean, I had lists and lists and lists of paper with song titles on and crossing stuff out. I'd imagine Mike probably just picked 5 and did them because that's how he is. But I spent a lot of time.
I was going to ask, did you know how he picked the songs of yours?
No, although the only thing I can say is that he is a genuine fan of what I do. And again, that's a weird thing for me to say out loud and for it to be true because how fucking cool is that?
Yeah,
but,
right.
But one of the cool things about the split is that, what makes this even cooler is that this wasn't discussed. It was just understood, was that we agreed to do it. And then it was like, cool, call me when you've finished doing your songs. It was like, neither of us had any input or any say or any control over what the other person was going to do. And obviously a lot of that's because there's a lot of trust in the room, which is part of the reason why it was a good idea anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
Respect each other as writers and particularly as arrangers, you know. So it was just, but I had no idea what songs they were doing or how they were doing them until I heard the finished mix, you know, and vice versa. Like Mike had no fucking idea what we were doing. I think he did ask at one point, and I told him to piss off. You know what I mean? It's like you'll see, motherfucker. So you know, it was definitely that was a really kind of fun part of it. What the coolest part about that was that I got to listen to the NoFX side of the split as a kind of disinterested listener almost. You know what I mean? I had no idea what it was. And it was finished. You know what I mean? And then it was. I mean, obviously, then on top of that, like NoFX are a stylistically distinct band. You know, they have a certain tone.
Sure.
And to hear songs that I wrote in that style with that voice singing it and all the rest of it, that was an unbelievable moment for me. I mean, you know, I know it's the current thing happening in my life, but it really does feel like one of the absolute highlights of my career to me is doing a split NoFX.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I've heard 2 versions or 2 songs that you've done. I think those are the 2 you have out on Spotify.
Yeah.
Like the Bob cover. I love like the way that you changed almost like the melody a little bit to the song. It's kind of like this country style. I love it.
Yeah. Well, ever since I first heard that song, I thought it was a country song. It was secretly a country song. The lyrics sound like they could have been written by Merle Haggard, you know what I mean? Or George Jones or something like that.
Sure.
And so, you know, but that's what I mean about finding something to bring to the table. I was kind of like, well, cool, let's find a way of playing that song that really highlights that aspect of the tune. And so we did.
Yeah, and same with Falling in Love. Totally different.
Yeah. That one's kind of funny.
Darker sound. It's kind of like darker.
Yeah, I wanted to go for the kind of like Leonard Cohen kind of vibe for that song. That song's kind of interesting because like I almost want to say like one of the very first times me and Mike hung out, we were getting drunk in a bar somewhere in LA, and I kind of said to him, dude, like, you know, I was being probably a bit of a punisher, and I was like, "Oh, I love your music," and I sort of said, "Man, you know, Falling in Love is one of your best songs." And he looked at me, and he was like, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I think that too, but literally no one else does." He was like, "It's not like it's a song people don't like. It's just an overlooked song in their catalog." But he was like,
right.
he said, I've always felt that was one of the best songs I ever wrote. And I was like, well, I agree. And I think almost in a way that was a foundational stone for our friendship, in the sense that it was like, cool, we both think about songs in the same way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I love that you just in the the songs that you chose, I had to go and like relook up, like, oh, Even Falling in Love. I'm like, what record was that on? Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And then like in finding those, that's pretty cool. I can't wait to hear you're gonna do Perfect Government and
Yeah.
Eat the Meek or the other
Yeah,
one.
I have to say, I mean, one shouldn't pick favorites in life, right? But like, I think that Eat the Meek is my favorite song from my side of the split. I think we really got that one down.
Okay. How are the other versions? Are all the songs quite different?
Yeah, they're all pretty different. I mean, Eat the Meek is like, it's a stylistically, it's very different from the original, and it's also pretty different from anything I've ever done before. So that's part of the reason I like it so much. Perfect Government's kind of, we did in the style of Recovery or The Next Storm or I Still Believe, like my wheelhouse, should we say? You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Hmm.
And then Scavenger's Type's kind of a punk song, but you'll hear it in good time.
Yeah, I can't wait. That's so awesome. And I also did see that you're doing like a Instagram live show coming up here in August.
Oh yeah, well, I'm doing a live stream show with my band on August
Yeah,
9th.
tell me
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that
yeah.
one.
Well, so I mean, obviously, live music is, somebody found the big switch for live music and put it in the off position.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
pew! And that's pretty galling for me, because not only am I somebody who's been touring for 20 years and it is my identity and all the rest of it, it's also how I make my living and pay my rent. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
Sure.
and I'm not far from unique in this, but it's a difficult time to be a touring person. I did 16 live stream shows from my house during lockdown, just with me and my guitar. I played through everything I got, basically.
That's
And
cool.
I did them as fundraisers for independent venues, because independent venues here, as everywhere else in the world, are kind of going through a rough patch right now.
Sure.
So I did that, but like that had to come to an end because I ran out of songs, basically. Do you know what I mean? It was like, there's nothing left.
I
But
think people just didn't realize it was going to last this long, too. It was
no,
like, yeah.
me either. Me either. I remember at one point thinking, "Oh, I wonder if I'll get through all my records," and then it got to the point where I was doing a Disney cover set and being like, "When will this end?"
Yeah.
Um, but basically, you know, the restrictions have eased a little bit over here so that you can do stuff like this. And so I'm going to meet up with the guys in the band who I haven't seen since February. You know what I
Oh
mean?
my gosh, yeah.
And we're gonna rehearse, and then it's gonna be like a multi-camera shoot, and then we got our lighting people are coming in. It's gonna look cool as shit. It's still a live stream at the end of the day, but it's gonna be cool. And like, we're doing a split on the proceeds. It's a ticketed thing, but we're doing a split on the proceeds for me and everybody in my touring family. So all of the band, all the crew, everyone's gonna hopefully be helped out with it.
That's cool. That's so awesome. I can't wait to see that. And then I have a question too, because you put that it's going to be show 2,500 full band.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, every show? Because I saw one earlier. You're like, this is show 2,300 and whatever.
Yeah. There's a list on my website. You can go and look at it.
That's so rad.
I started at the beginning, because so the story with that was that the drummer in Million Dead, Ben, who's the guy who I play with in Mongol Horde now, Ben counted the Million Dead shows, and at the time I thought that he was a bit weird for doing that. I was like, what are you doing? And then once the band was done, I was actually quite pleased that he'd done that, because I was like, oh, cool, I've got a list of what we did. And that was 15 years ago. And I look at it now and I'm so grateful that he did that, because I couldn't remember anything about Million Dead now. It's way too long ago. And so I started keeping a list of my own. And for the longest time, I was the only person who was aware of it or gave a shit, you know? And then, so for example, I threw a party for show 1000, and I got some friends of mine to promote the show with me. And they were like, show 1000 what? And I was like, well, it's my 1000th show. And they were like, no, it's not. And they were just like, how do you even know? And I sort of told them all about it.
That's so rad.
But then as time went by, it sort of acquired a life of its own. And then about 3.5 years ago, I did show 2000. And for that one, like everybody was trying to kind of kill each other to get tickets. Everyone wanted to know where it was going to be. We've kind of filmed it for DVD, blah, 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 all this shit. So, so we're definitely going to, we're making a song and dance about this one as well.
Very cool. That's so awesome. Thank you so much, Frank, for talking to me today. I really, really
Oh, it's my
appreciate
pleasure,
it.
man. So you're in San Diego, right?
Yeah, we're in San Diego.
It's been too long since I was in San Diego. Obviously, right now I can't even get into your country one way or the other.
Sure.
But as and when that's possible again, I am intending to make amends and tour as much as I can. So hopefully, I will see you sooner rather than later.
Yeah, if you don't come to San Diego, LA, wherever, I mean, yeah, we'll
Well,
be there. I can't
see,
wait.
but here's the thing. Here's the thing, right? You shouldn't say that, right? And I'll tell you why. Because so part of the reason why I have a bit of a rep for playing in slightly off the beaten track places and all the rest of it is because
Uh-huh.
I grew up in a city, Winchester, where no one ever came to Winchester. It was like go to Southampton and go to London. And
Right.
those few bands that did, you were so grateful for it. Do you know what I mean? And you had a
Sure.
special thing for them. So on that level, like it's like, yeah, I understand that people from San Diego can come to LA, but I want to go to San Diego. Do you know what I mean? I want to make that gesture. So, and
Yeah,
plus
we want
San
you in
Diego's,
San Diego.
yeah, San Diego's cool as shit, man. I fucking love San Diego. So I will see you there at some point.
Hell yeah, I really appreciate that. I have one more question for you. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
I mean, let me try and pitch this right because I have a very long and very short answer to this, and I'll try and do something medium. I mean, the short answer is like, be good. You know, it's like it's funny. A lot of the time when people answer this kind of thing, they get into the kind of nitty gritty of how to do social media promotion and blah blah, blah how to network and all this kind of thing. And all of that matters, and all of that is important or can be important. But it doesn't matter a damn if you suck. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, be your own harshest critic. Do you know what I mean? Find out what's wrong with the song you just wrote before anyone else does. I do that. That doesn't mean you shouldn't put it out because I don't think you should like try and sit on everything you do until you've written your masterpiece because then you just go crazy. But like, you know, figure out what you could do better next time around. Always believe the next song you write is going to be the best song that you write. Really like push yourself, be critical with yourself, but in a constructive way. Do you know what I mean? And push yourself forward. Once you've done all that, yeah, cool. Find ways of promoting what you do, of connecting with the world, all the rest of it. One of the cool things about now is that because the internet kind of nuked the existing music industry structure, it means that no one's even now no one's entirely clear what the rules are, and that's an opportunity for a new band. Fuck it, do something original, do something no one else has done before, come up with a new idea to promote yourself, whatever it might be. I mean, my thing was kind of old fashioned. I just went out and played a billion shows, like day after day after day after day after day after day. But you know, different bands kind of come up with different approaches and all the rest of it. And if you are good at what you do, and if you make noise and make waves, then you know the industry will come to you. Don't spend your whole life like sending demos to major record labels. Fuck those guys. They'll come to you if what you're doing is worthwhile. You know what I mean? So make a noise, make a good noise, and kick up a fuss, and then see how it goes.